World of Warfare presents the Tuskegee Airmen. While white America in the 1940s considered themselves to be a society based on equality and freedom, black Americans considered such a notion patently absurd. During the war years, white America saw their entry into World War II as a fundamental struggle between good and evil, yet black Americans, long penned in by Jim Crow laws and racial marginalization, understood that the struggle between good versus evil raged like a wildfire in their own backyard. Particularly strident in southern states, blacks attended separate and inferior schools, used separate blacks-only bathrooms, and were openly banned from whites-only restaurants, movie theaters, and other public venues. Job opportunities afforded white Americans did not trickle down to black applicants, even when a black worker possessed higher education and training than their less credentialed white counterparts. While blacks had proudly served in the Indian Wars, the Spanish-American War, the Civil War, and World War I, most black servicemen were grouped into all-black service units, which performed menial tasks and maintenance jobs without direct combat duty. Racial discrimination persisted in all levels of military leadership leading up to World War II, including the Chief of the Army Air Corps, Henry Hap Arnold, who wrote in 1940 that blacks could perform the duties of post-fatigue and as waiters in our messes. Secretary of War Henry Stimson furthered Arnold's sentiments when he wrote that leadership is not embedded in the Negro race. Decreed by President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1938, the Civilian Pilot Training Program, or CPTP, mandated that 20,000 college students were to be trained each year as pilots. However, the legislation excluded black universities and their respective student bodies. The situation began to soften when black barnstormers Chauncey Spencer and Dale White flew their rickety biplane from Chicago to Washington, D.C. to promote aviation for black Americans. A little-known senator from Missouri, Harry S. Truman, gave the two aviators an audience, and when the senator saw the condition of the lobbyist's airplane, he said, "If you guys had guts enough to fly this thing from Chicago, I got guts enough to do all I can to help you." Truman's efforts encouraged Congress to authorize CPTP funding for black students in white colleges only, which at the time was a near oxymoron. After 2,700 black pilots earned their wings despite Truman's self-limiting legislation, on October 15th of 1939, the Tuskegee Institute, an all-black university in Alabama, was added to the list of CPTP-qualified schools. Since the Tuskegee Institute was 40 miles from the nearest airport, the school leased a plot of land in 1940, gifting the students $1,000 in material support, while students volunteered their time to build Airport No. 1, which when completed could accommodate 3 Piper Cubs. Successful pilot candidates made national news when the first class of CPTP Tuskegee Institute students passed their Civil Aviation Authority written exam. After the initial success of the program, the Institute urged alumni and charitable organizations to pony up $200,000 to build a larger airport for the university's student pilots. One such charity was the Julius Rosenwald Fund, whose board included Eleanor Roosevelt. Eleanor quickly embraced the idea of blacks in aviation, paying a visit to Airport No. 1 for a personal inspection of the facility. Despite vehement protests from her Secret Service detachment, the president's wife went aloft in a Piper Cub, flown by flight instructor C. Alfred Chief Anderson. Once back on the ground, Eleanor convinced the Julius Rosenwald Fund to donate $175,000 for the construction of Airport No. 2. Despite the success of the Tuskegee Institute's CPTP program, the Army Air Corps continued its segregationist policies, maintaining that no pilots of color would be allowed in the Air Force. President Roosevelt, meanwhile, mired in an election campaign and eager to capture the black vote, issued on October the 9th of 1940 a statement that officially decreed that blacks should serve in the military in numbers representative of their percentage of the total U.S. population. While the Navy refused to back Roosevelt's policy, the Army promoted Benjamin O. Davis Sr. to Brigadier General, anointing him as the first black American to achieve such rank. The promotion was largely lip service on the part of the Army, and when Howard University CPTP student flyer Yancey Williams sued the Army after they refused to admit him into their Air Cadet training program, the War Department quickly infused $1 million to build the Tuskegee Army Airfield. Although still segregated, the young black aviators were set on a course for their first official participation in the United States' looming entry into World War II. After 4 years of discrimination at the U.S. Military Academy, Benjamin O. Davis, Jr. applied for flight training but was denied until the creation of the Tuskegee Army Airfield made him an obvious candidate to lead the new all-black combat unit. Discrimination followed him to Fort Riley, Kansas, where white physicians did their best to sabotage his trajectory. The flight surgeon who gave me the exam did what all flight surgeons were doing when they had black applicants, Davis recalled. He wrote down that I had epilepsy and I was not qualified for flying training. The Army Air Corps soon flew Davis to Maxwell Field near Montgomery, Alabama, where a second examination by a team of doctors quickly overturned the bogus diagnosis from his first examination. Cadets at Tuskegee Army Airfield received primary instruction in Stearman PT-17 biplanes at Moton Field, Tuskegee, Alabama, before traveling 12 miles to Tuskegee Army Airfield, where they underwent secondary training in Vultee BT-13 single-wing trainers nicknamed the Vibrator. Once they achieved proficiency in metal wing trainers, they moved up to advanced flight training in AT-6 Texans. On March 7th of 1942, Class 42C was the first unit to graduate from Tuskegee Army Airfield Flight School, yet just 5 of the original 12 inductees earned their wings. Additional classes soon worked their way through flight school, along with the arrival of some battered P-39s and P-40s for advanced fighter training. The graduating class of 42F suffered the group's first casualty when on his wedding day, Faith McGinnis volunteered to fill out a flight of 8 planes. When the formation went into a loop, McGinnis either blacked out or misjudged his altitude, sending him careening to his death. On October 13th of 1942, the 332nd Fighter Group came into service at Tuskegee, comprising the 100th, the 301st, and the 302nd Fighter Squadrons, later to include the 99th Fighter Squadron, as well as ground units consisting of the 96th Service Group, the 83rd Fighter Control Squadron, and the 689th Signal Warning Company. Tuskegee Army Airfield remained in operation until 1949, graduating 1,030 pilots during and after the war. Many of the Tuskegee graduates were assigned to the 477th Medium Bombardment Group, which due to prejudice or Army snafu, never made it into combat. An additional 40 Tuskegee Airmen served in the Pacific Theater, flying light aircraft as artillery spotters, while the remaining Tuskegee Airmen were destined to be fighter jocks in the ETO. On April 1st of 1943, the 99th Fighter Squadron received deployment orders to Casablanca in support of the North African campaign. After the Nazis and the fascists were pushed out of southern Italy, on October 17th of that same year, the 99th relocated to Foggia No. 3 Air Base. Over the course of their existence, the Tuskegee Airmen flew an assortment of combat aircraft, including Airacobras, Warhawks, Thunderbolts, and Mustangs. By April 15th of 1944, the headquarters of the 332nd Fighter Group, along with the 301st and 302nd Fighter Squadrons, departed their airbase at Montecorvino to join the 100th Fighter Squadron at Capodichino, which proved to be a far more comfortable arrangement, save for the Luftwaffe's frequent bombing raids. On July 3rd, the Tuskegee Airmen moved to their final airbase at Ramitelli, where they would finish out the war flying P-51 Mustangs. Other times, we would see enemy planes that would never get us because for our fighter support, we had the Tuskegee Airmen a lot, and we were glad to have them, recalled Charles Andrews of the 376 Bomb Group. The Tuskegee Airmen were out to prove that they were as good or better than anyone else, and they dang sure did it. When asked if he detected any racial tension during his time in Italy, Andrews went on to say that, "I think we all honored all the servicemen. Each one had their job to do. They were just doing their job like everybody else, and they were good at it." In terms of Tuskegee Airmen combat action during the war, on a July 12, 1944 mission to bomb the marshalling yards at Nîmes, France, the Tuskegee Airmen of the 332nd Fighter Group provided escort cover to their big friends. On the run-up to the target, 25 German fighters bounced the Tuskegee Airmen as they approached the French coast, setting off a raging dogfight which pitted P-51s against FW-190s. Flight leader Joseph Ellsbury gave chase to a FW-190 after the German made a firing pass on the bomber stream. Turning into the enemy fighter, Ellsbury lined up a 30-degree deflection shot that struck the German's motor and wing route. Thick black smoke trailed from the 190 as it fell off to the left. Almost immediately, Ellsbury locked into another Fokker-Wulf that turned below his Mustang. Ellsbury rolled into another 30-degree dive, giving a short burst until bits of the enemy's left wing flew off the plane. Ellsbury performed a split S maneuver, chasing the doomed enemy earthward until the plane slammed into the ground. Climbing back up to rejoin his flight, Ellsbury caught a third FW-190 on the run, downing the plane with a 2-second burst from his machine guns. Once again, Ellsbury attempted to rejoin his group until he crossed paths with yet another FW-190, descending in a 45-degree dive. Ellsbury rolled right and followed the enemy down, firing his left wing guns as he gave his Mustang hard right rudder to keep the enemy in his sight. He scored hits on the enemy's left wing route. In response, the 190 spiraled down toward Earth, slamming into the ground before the pilot could bail out. Ellsbury finished the mission with 3 kills and a probable. On July 16, 1944, the Checkertail clan went on a sweep to Vienna, where they ran into a large formation of German fighters. While the majority of the Messerschmitts escaped into cloud cover, Robert Black, Ernest Beverly, and Bruce Cobb bounced approximately 15 to 20 enemy aircraft. Black claimed 2 kills, while Beverly and Cobb were each credited with 1. 3 Me-110s also went down without shots fired when Stanley DeGreer, Horace Self Jr., and Edwin R. Williams bounced the twin-engine fighters. Panicked by the diving approach of faster, more nimble Mustangs, the center pilot rolled his plane in an effort to make a run for the deck. Instead, he collided with both his wingmen, sending all 3 planes earthward for a fiery communal end. His wingtips struck those airplanes, and all 3 crashed together, Williams recalled. The air was filled with motors, wings, and tails. On July 18th of 1944, the 15th flew missions to Friedrichshafen, Germany, bombing airdromes, oil refineries, and armament factories. The Checkertails and the Redtails from the 325th and 332nd Fighter Groups, respectively, escorted 112 B-17s, although the Checkertails were mistakenly recalled before the bomber stream reached Memmingen, Germany. That left 58 fighters from the Tuskegee Airmen, who tangled with 30 Me-109s over northern Italy. 21 pilots dropped their wing tanks prior to engagement, then tore into the 109s with punishing results. 9 enemy fighters went down in the dogfight, although the 332nd lost one of its own when it was struck by a falling wing tank. I saw a formation of 109s straight ahead, and I closed to about 200 feet and started firing, recalled then 20-year-old Clarence Lucky Lester. Smoke began to pour from the aircraft, and a little later it exploded. I was going so fast, I was sure I would hit some of the debris, but luckily I didn't. As I was dodging pieces of the enemy aircraft, I saw another 109 to my right, all alone on a heading 90 degrees to mine, at the same altitude. I turned onto his tail and closed to about 200 feet while firing. I noticed the aircraft began to smoke and almost stopped. I was going so fast I overran him, but noticed a blonde pilot parachute from his burning plane. I was alone and looking for my flight mates, Lester continued, when I spotted a third Me-109 flying very low, about 1,000 feet above the ground. Lester dropped in on the enemy, fired his machine guns, and claimed his third victory of the day. While 21 fighters returned to Ramitelli Airfield after their dogfight with the Germans, the remaining 37 Tuskegee Airmen flew support for B-17s from the 2nd and 463rd Bomb Groups. Approaching the target, the 483rd Bomb Group was chopped to pieces by 127 German fighters. Fighting through odds severely stacked against them, the Tuskegee Airmen attacked the German fighters 2 by 2, while the 52nd Fighter Group, previously discharged from escort duty, turned back on their flight home to lend a hand in the fight. Awaiting the bomber stream near Friedrichshafen, the 1st Fighter Group also turned around to offer aid when they heard the tense voices of aerial combat over their radios. When they finally reached the bomber stream, they approached in horror as some 90 Me-109s cut into the formations. Most of the arriving fighter pilots witnessed a dozen fortresses fall from the sky before they could properly engage the enemy. In a 20-minute running air battle, 15th Fighters downed 24 Me-109s. I shot at least 8 of them, and 2 went down, recalled Flight Leader William H. Coughlin. All the Jerrys that I didn't get, my flight got. Every man in my flight got at least one enemy. The 3 heroic fighter groups engaged in the battle logged 40 kills against 5 losses. However, 15 heavy bombers were lost during the mission, 14 from the 483rd Bomb Group, making maximum effort for the 15th Air Force, one of the deadliest periods in the annals of World War II aviation.